Hi, welcome to the Pot Smokers Bible. My name is Zion, and I am the author of the Pot Smokers Bible and the storyteller of the Book of Zion. I don't claim to have written the Book of Zion because it is written in the words of the prophets. I just put them in order. So I'm not quite sure how to claim the Book of Zion, but the Pot Smokers Bible is totally mine. And today we're going to do the first part of chapter 1 of the Pot Smokers Bible, and it is called The Gray. From the beginning of the human race, as we know it, there's only ever been one true authority on earth, and that is God. It doesn't matter who you ask. It doesn't matter where on earth you go. God has always been the authority on earth, from the beginning of recorded history. But who is God? No matter where you go on earth, no matter who you ask, you'll always be told names. For some, you'll be given many names, and for others, you'll be given a single name. But the names are for individuals to differentiate single entities. So a name tells us nothing about the individual who uses that name. So who or what then is God? Now, most humans look to ancient texts to find God. That's where all the names come from. They read the ancient scripts and they accept them without question. Then, as all storytellers do, they embellish. They add to those ancient stories. This is where myths come from. But that only confuses the issue. The ancient writing is where our understanding of God comes from. But we don't understand. Now, those ancient writings come from a relatively primitive human race. What they saw and experienced was fantastic to their primitive, simple minds. Their vocabulary was very limited. They did not understand how to explain what they experienced. So they left us with some very vague, simple, and primitive language. So we must look beyond their limited vocabulary to see the true nature of their experience. Now, beginning with their true meaning of the word God. The oldest known meaning of the word God comes from the Assyrians of Mesopotamia. To them, it meant those who from the heavens came. God, no matter which one you choose, comes from above. So the true modern interpretation for the word God is alien. Every God known to mankind is a God from heaven, except Jesus, of course. He was a hybrid of the God that came from heaven. All of those heavenly beings could fly. Many images of God, as we have them, show them with wings. It would stand to reason that a God from heaven could fly, because only through flight could an alien descend from heaven. So the true God is an alien. God is alien. He comes from beyond our planet. He flies in our skies. He looks down on us. Our search for the true authority on earth, then, is a search for an alien. Because all we know about God is that he's not from here. God is an alien God. So our modern interpretation of God is UFO, or as we call them, the gray. There is no other explanation for God, not as we know them. Our modern scientific mind forgets the ancient meaning of God as alien. So when we look into the sky and we see our modern God, we think UFO. But UFOs are exactly what the ancients saw. They could not identify the spaceships flying around in their skies or their occupants. But unlike us, they embraced their alien gods because the aliens were their creators. The ancient humans tell us that the god was the creator. The aliens come to Earth. They create mankind. No ancient human would have doubted God's authority or the right to that authority because our forefathers knew God. They accepted God as the creator. So if we are to accept the ancient texts re-examined in a modern light, then we realize that we're alien made. The gods literally made us in their own image, just as we're told. They came here. They created us. They ruled over us. They were aliens. And we owe them our very existence. We are their children. Our modern interpretation of the ancient text tells us that we're hybrids, genetically enhanced Neanderthals. So that begs the question, why were we created? The aliens must have had a reason. According to the ancient cuneiform text, we were created to be a labor force. Our job was to mine for gold and other metals. Why? Why didn't they just come down here and mine it for themselves? Well, according to Ishi, it's because they can't breathe our air. That's why we were created. We were enhanced proto-humans, given their DNA to make us smarter, able to understand what they needed. That was why we were created. We call them gray, but according to Ishi, they were blue-skinned, like the Hindu depictions. The gray encounter suits that we see them in aren't their true appearance, but that is how we see them. And the huge slanted eyes, they're goggles to protect their sight and to enhance their vision. They seem scary as hell to us, but imagine a primitive race seeing us in huge spacesuits. We would look just as alien to them as the gray do to us. The gray spacesuits is what we see them in, and we call them gray, but that's not accurate. But they accept that name for our sake. So the gray, who are blue, are the children of the ancient gods, just as we are descended from the people they knew. Our myth of God is that he is eternal, but that's only a myth. The gray, who know their own history, and others, are not eternal beings. They are flesh and blood, just like we are. Their race has generations, just as we do. That is why there are so many names. The ancient names for God, they were all individuals. So each name represented an individual physical being. Each new generation came with a new name. That's why the names for God is I am that I am, Yahweh, Jehovah. And now, of course, those are the Hebrew names. There are other names from other locations, like Krishna and Shiva and Baal and Thor and Ishtar and Zeus and Hera and I could go on. Odin, they're all there. Now, the names of God go on, but they were people with individual names, and each name was a different alien who we call God. Ishi is one of their names. Actually, the ancient Gray told the name Ishi, sending that name through time. When I began to talk with Ishi, I chose that name for him because he told me that I could never say his name. His language is telepathic and spoken in images as well as in words. So Ishi is the name that the ancients chose for the first gray contactee for our time. That's the name that I chose for my gray. My conversations with Ishi began in the 1990s. We have spoken many times. He is the father of my hybrid gray daughter, Rihanna, the oldest of my gray children, my many gray children. My daughter, Rihanna, was the first hybrid to survive, and her incubation almost killed me. She barely survived, but she has my strong German farmer's DNA in her, so she lived. Her birth story was the first conversation that Ishi and I had. I have contact with other aliens as well, but I speak mainly to Ishi and Rihanna. We speak through our implanted human, who is their channel. He has the ability to exchange consciousnesses with them. We then have what we call visit. Although our visits are mainly within the family, I have had other visitors as well. Although I have had many visits with them, I haven't been abducted like many others. They did not want me to be traumatized like other humans. For me, they needed for me to trust them so that I could undo the damage done by the abductions of other humans. The abductions were forced upon them by our governments, who refused to use their technology for the benefit of humanity. The atom bomb was a direct violation of the agreement between the governments and the Grey. By violating this agreement, the Grey were forced to go to extreme measures in order for them to survive. If the Grey had not abducted humans, their race would have become extinct. The reason they left was to preserve their DNA within us. We have their genetic makeup as well as earthly DNA. That gray DNA is what saved their race. They had to use our gray DNA to so that because they had no choice. They had to because the governments were unwilling to give it in safe exchange. The reason our DNA had to be protected for future use was because they had to resort to using cloning to survive. And as we ourselves know, cloning cannot be sustained. The DNA degrades over generations. They returned as promised when their cloning DNA degraded to a critical level. They protected our DNA to preserve their species. Our ancient mythologies tells part of this story of their reason for cloning. The human myth tells us that the Grey were having sex with their creations. The world is full of such tales. Zeus was one example. Then we are told that war broke out between the gods. Then the gods left. That left us with the promise that they would return. And that is what our myths have told us about gods. And that is where I'm going to end this first part of chapter 1. So see you next time. Okay, bye.